Peace and greetings. Change of scenery and maybe some sounds. Um, Greetings. How are you all? I hear birds. Today we're looking at what community is for and what community isn't for. And let's just do that. What community is for and what community isn't for. And these are things that I've learned and that I'm still learning. So we may have this discussion again. A community is a relationship. It is a microcosm of what happens between two people in a there's a macrocosm, excuse me, of what happens between two people in a microcosm. So the relationship in community is dynamic, which means it has push and pull, it has give and take, it has taut, tightness, and ease. In order for a community to work well, all people in the community have to be able to be present, have to be able to be fully present. Unfortunately, communities don't always survive the push and pull, the taut and ease, the back and forth, the discord, and then being on. And because that happens in communities, oftentimes, um, adversity or disagreements are avoided for the sake of the whole. And when they're avoided for the sake of the whole, then the whole doesn't get to grow. The whole doesn't get to know exactly who is comprising this unit, who is making up this uh, union of minds and action. Communities have common goals, common aims, um, common objectives. And in those common goals, aims, and objectives, there's space for the people that are a part of that community to grow. There's space for people who are a part of that um, to the part of that community to sharpen each other. Iron sharpens iron. In order for iron to sharpen iron, however, it does rub against each other. It does have friction. Um, Also to inspire each other to grow, which would be like being each other's soil, sun, water, fertilizer, which still goes back to using the things that may not serve us anymore to serve others, using the lessons that were challenging to share with others so they can grow. What community is not is hive mind. It is not blind acceptance. It is not um, going along to get along without questioning. Really bad examples of community that we've seen are cults, are where the idea of the leader or the ideals of the leader um, cannot be discussed, cannot be shared, cannot be something that the whole community can take hold of and pour into and receive from. And when we have that, we have very violent, terrible examples in history where people blindly went along to their peril. What community is not is hive mind, because again, that's the same kind of idea where the people who are involved in it are not sharing their unique thoughts, their unique personhood. What is true, again, I'm a science geek and I like nature, I love nature. What is true in science and nature is true for us. Diversity promotes life. Diversity promotes party life. My students and I were studying survival of the fittest and evolution and looking at what actually makes a fit organism. And it's not necessarily the strongest organism, it's not the loudest organism, it's not the fastest organism. It is the one with enough unique traits that allow them to move forward in the evolution of their species. Having varied traits is also what allows that whole species to avoid being wiped out by anything that comes against them of prey, um, illness, viruses, bacteria. Because there's diversity in the group, one thing cannot wipe them all out. So the same has to be true in our communities. And I know that what happens, because that's what makes us like community, is that community starts to feel very comfortable. It feels safe, which it should. And in that safety, there's a fear that if I speak up or bring something different, the safety will cease to exist. But without that difference, without that allowance of difference, without the space for the whole to be comprised of many unique variations, it won't exist. And the same maladies or adversities or the same adversities that have taken down other organizations will take down this one, that one, whoever is the same one that feels comfortable. One of the things that I've consistently heard um, in various communities that I'm in is that we learn from our ancestors, we learn from the successes and the challenges of our ancestors. I would say failings, but they're not failings if you learn from them. So hive mind doesn't serve us, one, because it's not variation. And one of the places that we've seen hive mind in the history of the country I live in is in Jim Crow, is in racism. So it's Black History Month in the United States for the month of February. And I was talking to one of my sister friends, and because we are African-centered homeschoolers and uh, the adults that are in community are re-Africanized and re-Africanizing communities. Our Black history, African history, diasporian history is every day of the year. But when February comes, social media and the world around us are flooded with information about Africans, African Americans, and the African diaspora. And one of the things that popped up in my feed was lynchings and how the pictures of these show white Americans underneath bodies smiling. Um, they're at a community celebration. They're at a community celebration where they took their children. My family and I don't use the word picnic anymore because of its relation to lynchings and the phrase pick a N word, and then to go and celebrate in the presence of this body whose life has been taken, this human whose life has been extinguished, with no sadness in realizing that a life has been taken with no accountability, no shame, no guilt, no fear of just the natural order of what sowing into the world around you, that kind of evil and terror would bring back on families. And so when I think about what community is not, that's the picture I see in my head. I see glee in a place where there's death and terror and destruction, and how that was a community, and all the other terrible things that happened uh, in those communities in connection to lynchings and spaces like that. That is not what community is for. And that's a very dire, drastic, true, historical example, because it's so easy to say that's not what community is for. However, even with that, in the world that we are in, community often operates that way, without question, without challenge, with things happening around us that we know are evil and out of pocket. And people are still going along to get along because of fear of challenging who's in charge, or the fear that has deliberately been uh, put out to stop people from challenging. And granted, there are different communities that we are tied into. There are some that are very safe. There are some that we really enjoy being a part of, some that we cannot wait to gather with. And then there are some that are almost default. Um, the communities we live in, the countries we live in, the states, the towns that we live in. And all of those are built on smaller ones. They're all built on individual relationships, family relationships. That family makes up communities, those relationships, those communities are larger. They're all built on smaller units. So I just want to encourage that what a community is for is to grow the members of that community. It is to hold the members of that community accountable in a dynamic fashion where it is not static, where it does not stay the same, where it is able to move and be malleable. There's a proverb that I'm not going to say exactly correct, but it talks about um, trees don't break because they can bend. So either it's the wind that's causing them to bend, or it's the heft in the fruit on the trees that allows them to bend. It could be children playing in the trees, but their flexibility allows them to not snap or break. And we want our communities to be dynamic, full of variety, able to challenge and accept, able to grow and develop, able to collectively reflect, to consider some of the ideas that come out of variety in that community, to be able to collectively reflect and determine as a whole what is best for us as we move forward. That is what allows survival of the fittest as a community. So those are the things community is for and is not for. And what that says to me personally is that as I play my part in community, I have to make sure that I am clear on what my part is. I have to be sure that I'm clear on what I'm bringing. I have to be in spaces where I can discuss that and share that, receive reflection, receive um, discussion about how this fits, how it may not fit. But I have to be able to be a distinct part of the whole to bring what is uniquely mine to the community. So I hope that helps. I hope that helps. Tomorrow we will do this wonderful story and stretch that I've been looking forward to all week long. And I look forward to sharing that with you. So participate in community, do not shrink away from it. We are often in one-sided communities. Social media creates a place where there is a lot of groupthink and hivethink. And so if something is shared, there's very little dialogue, but there's a lot of shouting. There's a lot of shouting, and that's not community. Being able to sit closeted in a space and send out hurtful, harmful things and then disappear back into the shadows is not communication. It is not community. And we want to make sure that we are in community where we can discuss and touch and receive, hold accountable, accept, hold space for each other. We want to make sure that we can do that. So I will see you tomorrow. This is Reverend Okomfo Walimu. Can't see my face. Walimu Yogi, Sister Mama Adi is saying, I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.